Okay, so we'll start. Welcome everyone. Welcome those of you zooming in, and welcome to those of you watching this recording later on. Already, quite a lot of people are watching these led meditations and meditation teachings. So, welcome to you in the future, as it were. So, yes, we've been exploring the work of Iain McGilchrist in this first kind of cycle of events of the nature of mind. So we posted 2 conversations with Iain McGilchrist, where he was in conversation with myself and Joanna Varcher. Later on in the year, he's going to be doing an in-person conversation at the London Buddhist Centre. So we'll be hosting more with Iain McGilchrist. His thought it is, I think, really important. And then we had a seminar exploring Iain McGilchrist's thought more deeply. And then this week we've been trying to put at least an element of his thought into practice, which is to do with moving from an over-reliance on the left hemisphere of the brain and its tendency to think of the world in terms of parts, in terms of categories, in terms of abstractions. It tends to be more literal minded. It's the detailed part of the brain. I mean, Iain McGilchrist's example of it is in birds. You know, when a bird with a bird's brain, they have a part of their brain literally attached, connected particularly to a particular part of the eye that is to do with finding that little tiny breadcrumb on the pavement. But they have another part of their brain that's always watching out for the whole context. You know, obviously to do with possible prey, being prey to something, or a possible mate. Yeah. So we have brains like that. We have a brain that can focus in on particular details, that needs a particular kind of activity, and a brain that is also open to the whole context of experience. And actually, the 2 sides of the brain kind of almost work in quite different ways and almost work against each other. You know, there's a whole question of why the brain is divided, for instance. So what we've been exploring this week is this important matter of going back into this whole experience, an embodied whole experience, a unified, contextualized experience that's to do with meaning and value. You can't forget meaning and value from the left hemisphere of the brain. That's to do with detail, category, abstraction, and parts. Meaning is always to do with the whole, yeah? It's always to do with context and what things come to mean. As I said, when I was young, I was at art school, and we all talked about Foucault and Derrida, which was all about, at least what people said it was about deconstruction, taking wholes apart into bits. And then, of course, we said that those bits didn't mean anything. So we created a meaningless universe by taking the world apart into bits and then showing that those bits didn't work. Like, it was like taking apart a car and then showing you that you couldn't drive it. So we've been exploring that through the body, and I've been trying to really emphasize that the foundation of meditation, remember, I haven't been teaching any particular practices. I've been trying to teach an approach to meditation, which we can bring to any practice. But the foundation of meditation is whole experience. What you're always looking for every time you sit to meditate is, firstly, you're going to be working with the nivaranas, with the so-called hindrances. And you're going to be you need to work with them. I need to work with them creatively, patiently, respectfully. I need to sort of be waiting on my experience rather than waiting for something to happen, as Heidegger said, and as Iain McGilchrist points out. So we've been trying to have a whole body experience where in mindful awareness and the body are unified. That you're not sort of looking at your body from a part of your brain, which is so often what we're doing, even when we're trying to become aware of the body. We're becoming aware of the body, if we're not careful, as category and part, rather than as unified kind of spirit and cloud of sensation, which is a little bit more accurate, but even that's a sort of a bit clumsy. And then I was saying that experience, the other way of thinking about that is this sense of well-being. Yeah. So we've been exploring this very important matter of well-being. Meditation deepens when there's wholeness and well-being. Yeah. So you and those two, they're not really two elements, they're experienced as one experience, a whole experience that is complete and warm, yeah, in the emotional sense, yeah, whole and a sense of well-being, and in a sense of intrinsic interest. Yeah, that's what we've been trying to find, that you're intrinsically into your experience, that you're not meditating for some good reason. I mean, it's fine to do that, of course, and that's what gets you to this Zoom call, or that's what gets you to your cushions or your chair in the morning to meditate. Probably because it's a good thing to do and it's good for you and has all the benefits and so on. But that's still a secondary, as it were, left brain reason to meditate. Anything that's valuable becomes valuable in and of itself as an end in itself. Friendship, the experience of beauty, meaning, meditation, all those great matters, virtue, generosity, they're good in and of themselves. They're not for something else. So you're trying to get to the point in meditation where you're just intrinsically into meditation. You value it, you want to be there. You're not doing it because some valuable but secondary reason, like it's good for you. Because then what if you've experienced things that don't feel so good for you? You're going to tend to give it up. So that's where we're trying to get to, this intrinsic interest in our experiences, this respectful curiosity about the nature of our experience, which is the nature of our mind, and that this cultivating or unearthing well-being, this creative attitude to yourself. Yeah. But right at the start, I mentioned Iain McGilchrist's 4 Paths to Truth, which I was really struck by, especially when you're reading a book about the great first section of it is all about neuroscience. And he said there are 4 paths to truth, and they are science, reason, imagination, and intuition. And he importantly says that without all 4, you're going to go wrong. Yeah. Without all 4, you're going to go wrong. If you don't have science, reason, intuition, and imagination in your exploration of truth, you're going to go wrong. Now, we haven't been doing much with science, apart from this Zoom call. We've been exploring really in terms of reason, intuition, and imagination. But what struck me as well about that, what he says there, is that it's a path to truth. And that's what Buddhism's interested in. He's interested in the truth of things. What is the truth of things? What is the truth of the mind? What is the truth of this human experience? So in this final session, I want to try and have us meditate on the truth of things. And Buddhist meditation is not about the truth of Buddhism. It's about the truth of life. How things really are is often how it's put. So how Buddhism would talk is in terms of Sila, Samadhi, Prajna. Those are the Sanskrit words. So Sila just means how you behave. So the Buddha would say to us, if you want a path to truth, you start with looking at your behavior. How do you treat other people? How do you behave? What do you do? Including what do you do in your mind, in the privacy of your mind? How do you relate to your own experience? So his great insight, one of his great insights was how you relate, how you behave, what you do, how you act, including and importantly, how you act in your mind, those tiny nanoseconds of thought, that is creating you all the time. That human beings aren't a given, that you are just as you are, but you're constantly creating yourself by how you behave. Yeah. So if you behave in a way that's mean, indignant, petty, etc., negative, then you'll end up with a certain kind of experience, primarily an unpleasant one. You'll end up with an experience that is contracted, isolated, and so on. If you behave from generosity, from gratitude, if you take an interest in people, if you connect with people, if you don't, take refuge in a sort of pseudo status, then what you experience is a different kind of mind, a different kind of you. And the Buddha is saying that's available to us all the time. Every moment we're shaping ourselves. We're like a potter shaping a pot. We're constantly shaping ourselves. So the experience we're having now is to do with how we've behaved in the past. Yeah? How we behaved with our body, how we behaved with our speech, and how we behaved with our mind. If we can behave in a way that's fruitful and expansive, that will lead us into meditation. Yeah? And the word for meditation is samadhi. And samadhi, sometimes translated as energized calm. We feel incredibly calm and at the same time full of energy. Really what I've been teaching all week is ways into samadhi, which are to do with wholeness and pleasure, with well-being. But the Buddha would say, well, that's not enough. That's not the truth. If we want a path to truth, we need to go beyond that. So he says, and we use that mind that we've uncovered in meditation, a mind that's unified, where thought, imagination, intuition are all running together in a new unity, and therefore are much more powerful. The reason our mind is so weak is because it's not running together. It's very often our mind is divided against itself, in conflict with itself, disintegrated. The more our mind is running together, the more we're intrinsically into value and meaning in our life and living that out, the more our mind becomes, as it were, powerful. I don't mean powerful in the sort of pejorative power over sense. I mean powerful in the sense of power to go into life more deeply, to experience life more fully. And you turn that more powerful mind to the truth. Yeah? After all, as Iain McGilchrist says, we have a path to truth. In his new book, it's a huge 2-volume doorstep of a book, which is waiting on my shelf at home for me to read for the next interview. I might need to go on holiday with a very large bag. The second volume of it is called So What is True? Yeah. So the Buddha would say, okay, well, if you're interested in the truth, you need to apply your mind, the mind that you've cultivated through sila and samadhi, through how you behaved and through meditation. You need to apply your mind to what he would say would be like the weak spot in reality. I mean, there's lots of ways of talking about this, but if I'm not careful, I'll talk too long, and I want to make sure we got enough time to meditate fully. He would say, look, there's a weak spot in reality. We're like in the Matrix. I mean, in a way, when the Matrix first came out, everyone kept telling me it was a Buddhist film. What they didn't quite notice is that the reality was horrible. You were in a bathtub plugged to a computer, weren't you, or something like that. And there are these weird spider things everywhere. But nobody seemed to have noticed that. But anyway, the metaphor was brilliant. There's that moment, isn't it, where somebody's eating a steak and saying, it tastes really lovely, but I know it's not real. Yeah. That's about as close to Buddhism as got. Somebody had obviously flicked through some Buddhist text when they were writing that. But yeah, the basic idea of the Matrix was that the reality that you experience, that I experienced just now sitting here in Adhisthana in Hereford in England, the reality that Becky's experiencing over there in Melbourne, the reality Maria Elena is experiencing at 3 a.m. in the morning in Venezuela, which feels so complete, so believable, that reality isn't it. It's not like that. That it's like the Matrix. It all fits. It's completely believable, but it's not the truth of things. Yeah? So Buddhism would say, well, for instance, the main thing that you do, that I do, that we all do, is when we talk about reality, we think of ourselves as a really existing person, real me, in a real world. Yeah, and that's our basic view. It's so deep, that view, that we take it to be a description of the truth. What we have is belief disguised as fact. So we think, so once you have a real self in a real world, what happens is that real self will one day die, leaving the real world without you, and that's the end of you. And we can smugly believe that that's actually just true. Our belief in real self, in real world, is so deep that we're like Victorian Christians, in the 19th century, who just thought that God was an absolute given, an unquestionable given, that not believing in God was kind of mad. Yeah, we like to be sort of ha about the Victorians and how silly they were, but we're just the same. We have belief which we disguise as a fact. So we think that there's a real self in a real world, and then we create in that the horror of death, because all we've got to lose is everything. So the Buddhists would say, well, we need to investigate that belief. And the Buddha would see it's clearly a belief, a view. And if you have that view, yes, life will appear to you in certain ways. You'll want to defend your real self from threat. And that sense of threat can be endless. One of the things that the COVID pandemic has done is set so many of us off into this endless sense of being threatened, that I must protect this real self from, countless threats. Some of my friends just can't get quite out of that mindset. You can provoke that endlessly, that you're always under threat. And also you'll tend to try to pull towards you anything that you think will strengthen this sense of a real self from the real world. So you'll want money, you'll want status, you'll want sex appeal, you'll want power, you'll want to, use your elbows, as they used to say. You'll want dominance over people so that your real self feels secure and embellished from the real world. Yeah? And they're consequences of the view that we have. Yeah, if we didn't have that view, those experiences wouldn't appear. Experience itself is not a bedrock. View creates experience. My example of this, I better not go on too long, but my example of this is a friend of mine who didn't get into Oxford University in England. And, his teachers had said he'd get into Oxford, and he thought he'd get into Oxford, and he didn't get in. And it was a major turning point in his life that he didn't get in. And, many years later, he was still talking to me about that moment and how he then felt, how he felt his life came unstitched from then. I didn't get into Oxford. Didn't have the slightest effect. Nobody expected I would do. I never expected. I'd never even been there. Seemed a nice place. The idea of me getting to Oxford would be like, pigs could fly kind of thing. So it was fine. There was no big turning point in my life. I never got upset. So my friend's upset about not getting into Oxford. You see how it's real, but it's based in a view. It's only because he thought he would and others thought he would that it becomes at all perturbing. If you didn't think you would, and if nobody else thought you would, not getting into Oxford doesn't upset you. So is the upset real or not? It's based, you see how it's real? It's real in one sense and it's unreal in another. Yeah. And all of our experience is like that. It's real in one sense, but unreal in another. And it's based on this unreal belief we have of a real self in a real world. Yeah. So the Buddha said, it's all very well to talk about it, but you need to have some kind of insight into that. You need to see that you're actually in a view of reality. And he said, look, that view you've got has got certain kind of weak spots. He might even say that there were 3, but let's just, for today, just talk about one weak spot in reality. And that weak spot of reality, which if you kind of press on and if you investigate, this reality that we've got, which is a deluded reality, which is a based in a wrong view, can open out into a new reality about which we can say nothing. Reality itself is beyond the reach of words and reason, beyond the reach of all kinds of, or any kind of understanding. It's beyond time and space. It's beyond self and other. It's beyond causality as we normally experience it. Beyond the physical senses and the rational mind. So we can't say anything about it, but what the Buddha could say is, never mind what is true, as Iain McGilchrist said. He said, well, the Buddha would say, well, just apply yourself to this weak point of reality. And that weak point, as some of you know, as many of you know, but hopefully many of you don't know because you're new to meditation and Buddhism, and that weak spot is the fact that all experience is impermanent. Yeah, that everything you experience doesn't perdure through time. It is inconstant. Yeah. So even your headache, your bad mood, the pain in your knee, even those things that I tend to make into a constant, they're inconstant. That everything you experience is an inconstant flux. Yeah. And the Buddha said that was where you needed to apply your attention, but it wasn't worth applying that attention to that fact with your normal, scattered, divided, chattering, trivial mind, because all you'll do is you'll apply your mind in a chattering, trivial kind of way to this massive matter. You first of all need a mind that's fit enough to be applied to the nature of reality. But let's nevertheless have a go, you know. So today what I want to do is try to meditatively see that all of your experience is inconstant. Or even if you don't believe me, then just see. Buddhism's not saying believe this, it's just saying, well, have a look at something that you think is constant. Is it constant? Have a look at this world you really think it exists. You experience everything of it through mind. There's no way of experiencing anything from a tractor to your knee that's not through your mind. Buddhism would say mind precedes world, that the world you experience is based on the mind you have. So we'll investigate mind. And in the final retreat of this whole what I hope to be the first 6 months of the nature of mind, we'll be particularly exploring this in more depth, but we need to investigate mind because all we experience is through mind. Yeah? So today we're going to, again, try to explore Samadhi, meditation, and then we'll turn our mind to at least a little bit of the nature of things, the nature of the weak spot in reality is not. Sometimes people say impermanence is how things really are. It's not how things really are. We can't say anything about how things really are, including whether they're permanent or impermanent. What we can say is that impermanence is the weak spot in reality, which if we were to understand deeply enough, reality would open up in an unimaginable way that we can't talk about as being permanent or impermanent. None of those words would apply to reality. Okay, so let's have a go at doing that. So setting yourself up so you can be completely comfortable. And as usual, I'll read a poem at the start and at the end. So give yourself enough time to set up. And then when you're ready, closing your eyes. As soon as you closed your eyes, bringing your awareness into your body. So opening out to how your body feels just now. And your body might feel comfortable or uncomfortable, or perhaps you just don't feel very much in your body, and that's all fine. You're just opening out to that, whatever it is, just like the weather. Just opening out to your whole body. So having a sense of your whole body sitting here. We're all sitting together around the world, more than 150 of us. So we're connected with each other just now. And once again, softening your face, softening your eyes. Softening your jaw and your mouth. And seeing if you can let go of your shoulders. Breathing into your shoulders. Imagining the breath soothing out and smoothing out muscles in your shoulders. So you could even imagine that you're breathing through your shoulders, soothing out, smoothing out any discomfort. And then again, softening your belly. You're often holding on with our belly without noticing it. So see if you can find ways of softening your belly. You might just imagine it, or you might breathe into your belly. Calming the body, calming your mind. Everything is going to be all right. How should I not be glad to contemplate the clouds clearing beyond the dormer window and a high tide reflected on the ceiling? There will be dying, but there is no need to go into that. The lines flow from the hand unbidden, and the hidden source is the watchful heart. The sun rises in spite of everything, and the far cities are beautiful and bright. I lie here in a riot of sunlight, watching the day break and the clouds flying. Everything is going to be all right. So first of all, extending your awareness to include your whole body in the ways that I've been teaching. See if you can nurture well-being and a sense of the whole body. So playing with that sense, using the breath if that helps, using your imagination if that helps. You are trying to be aware of the whole body and trying to imagine this state of well-being, of unified well-being. So keeping opening your awareness to include the whole body. And moving between that and cultivating a sense of well-being, of richness, of contentment. And when your mind goes off, you'll be going into one of the nirvananas. So see if you can feel what that feels like. And then stretching your mind out to include the whole body. So waiting on your experience, a patient, respectful, curious way. And staying in touch with your body, imagining or bringing to mind, remembering, feeling well-being, kind of sense of inner plenitude and warmth. Just bringing that to being by remembering something, by imagining that something. Then opening up again to your whole body. And then we're just going to bring to mind that all things are inconstant. All things, from our point of view at least, are impermanent. They're not fixed and stable. You don't need to ponder over that fact or prosily discuss it with ourselves. Just drop that reminder in. So opening out to the sounds around you, traffic outside, the bird song, the hissing of the heater. And particularly tuning into its inconstant nature. So sounds come into being and go out of being. They're never the same one moment to another. You don't need to think about that, you just try to open to that fact. Tune into the inconstant nature of sound. And you don't need to even listen to sound. Sound just appears in your mind. And it's inconstant. Keep on opening up to sound. Just noticing its inconstant nature. And then bringing your awareness to an area of the body that feels stuck or constant. So you might feel very tired just now, and you might feel that that's just a given, that's a kind of constant. Or you might have sore shoulders or a sore belly just now. And you might be relating to that as if it's just a constant sort of soreness. So see if you can take your mind into those sensations and see if your sense of discomfort in the body or tiredness or perhaps slight illness or whatever it is, constriction in your body, is it actually constant? Or is it like the sound around you, inconstant, constantly changing? Keep bringing your attention to an area that feels stuck or constant in some way. And try to see that it is inconstant. And then opening up again to your experience of sound and the inconstancy of sound. Everything is going to be all right. How should I not be glad to contemplate the clouds clearing beyond the dormer window and the high tide reflected on the ceiling? There will be dying. There will be dying. But there is no need to go into that. The lines flow from the hand unbidden, and the hidden source is the watchful heart. The sun rises in spite of everything, and the far cities are beautiful and bright. I lie here in a riot of sunlight, watching the day break and the clouds flying. Everything is going to be all right. So when you're ready, coming out of meditation. So once again, we've got a little bit of time. More questions, if you've got any questions.
If the unconditioned is permanent, outside space and time, does that mean consciousness and metta are also permanent?
It's only 8:05. I can't be answering questions like that. I don't know. I mean, what we have to remember, and what Maitreyabandhu, the founder of Triratna, keeps on reminding us, is that language is metaphorical. All language is metaphor. If we don't remember this, we get into troubles with language. So unconditioned is a metaphor. Outside is a metaphor. When we say something is outside time and space, outside is a metaphor, beyond is a metaphor. You can't say anything about the nature of reality. You can't say whether it's permanent or impermanent, whether it's inside or outside. So they're suggestive ways of exploring experience. Yeah. The thing to remember is, never mind conditioned or unconditioned, or they're all terribly grand words. Non-duality, the nature of reality, they're huge kind of abstractions. What Buddhism is saying again and again, and what Iain McGilchrist, without quite realizing, is pointing to, actually. After his interview with Jan and I, he was talking to somebody, and apparently that I happened to know, and he said to him, "It looks like I'm a Buddhist." Inadvertently, he'd become a Buddhist. What it's saying is that this experience we're having of real self in real world is not real, is not a complete sense of life, yeah? That there is much more than that. And you don't need to say a word for that much more. Bhante Sangharakshita, he says that what we're trying to do is go from less to more and from more to most. Yeah, less life to more life, and more life to the most life. Yeah, the Buddha represents the most life. You don't need words like the transcendental or non-duality or unconditioned. You could just say more life. Yeah. I don't mean more life in the sense of more fun, more cappuccinos, more sex, more money, because they're often less life, but more life. Yeah, that our life as we experience it is a diminished, narrowed thing, and that there is always more life. Yeah. Again, I remember reading Marilyn Robinson, whose work I'm very enamored of. And a character in her novel Gilead uses a metaphor as a cat. There's a cat in Gilead, I can't remember the name of the cat. And this character says, well, just as we know that there's more to life than the cat's experience, that we can see the cat is having an experience, but we have a larger experience that includes the cat but goes beyond it. So that's the case with us. That, we're like the cat, that there's an experience that includes everyday consciousness, but goes beyond it. Yeah? And no way of saying that ever quite gets it right. And every way of saying it has got strength to it, a way of understanding, like the unconditioned shows you that it's quite beyond everyday consciousness. But it's also got problems to it. It suggests that there's a place where things aren't conditioned. Any way of speaking creates opportunities and threats, to use a SWOT analysis. Yeah. The Buddha would say, never mind about that. Never mind about that. First of all, the Buddha is an enlightened pragmatist. He'd say, first of all, you haven't got a mind that's ready for this. So let's develop your mind. Let's make sure your mind is radiantly positive, unified. If he was talking to Iain McGilchrist, he'd say, make sure your mind is wonderfully balanced across the right and the left hemisphere of the brain. And then apply that clear, lucid, luminous, warm mind to this weak spot in reality, that all things are impermanent, that all things are inconstant. And then things will start to open out in their own way. I can't tell you how they'll open out. You just need to explore yourself. So he's pragmatic in that sense. He's not He's not sort of metaphysically telling you how things actually are. He says, here's where you need to work to find out how things actually are. Yeah.
Helena's asking, could you please say something about why we would probe this weak spot in reality? I.e., what's the purpose of trying to see or experience this other reality than the one that we usually experience?
Yeah, well, that's a very good question. Why would we do it? I don't know the answer. Because, well, why would you do it? Well, I don't know. Because this life is unsatisfying, really. Because everyday consciousness doesn't work. It's like those Airfix toys. I don't know if you're old enough to buy, a jet plane, and you had these great hopes for it, that you'd be able to build this jet plane that it looked like on the cover. And you got the glue and look at all the little plastic bits, and as you try and put them together, and as you do it, you get more and more frustrated with it, and then you lose something, and you get glue on your hands, and then the whole thing just won't quite click together. The Buddha's saying, well, your life is like, if you're honest about yourself, your life is like that. It will never quite go together. There's something unaccounted for that means that it can never quite fit. So the job that you really hoped for, when you get it, strangely doesn't make you a happy, content, confident person that you think you will. The relationship that you've always wanted, when you get it, you then end up feeling slightly bored. You're not in love all the time. The success that comes to you, the more success you get, the less it means to you, so that you get diminished returns, and you have to have a bigger and bigger success to have the pleasure from success. And then when you're not successful, you feel really indignant. The Buddha would say simply that ordinary everyday consciousness, the way we try to live, doesn't work. We want to be happy and fulfilled all the time. We're the most ambitious creatures in the universe. We want to be permanently happy and satisfied. And the Buddha would say, yeah, that's fine. And you do want to be that. Everybody does. And you can be, and that's called Buddhahood. The Zen poet Ryokan says, if you want to go south when you want to go north, when you mean to go, if you point your cart north when you mean to go south, how will you arrive? So what he means by that is that what you want is right. You want lasting happiness, pleasure, meaning, value, and living from that all the time. But if you try and find that in career, relationships, status, money, and so forth, you're just going in the opposite direction. They're kind of distorted versions of what you really want. And you know that because they don't work. I wish they did. If they are, all those things are working for people, please let me know. So then, because life seems unsatisfactory, and I think what Buddhist meditations assume, and of course there's lots of good reasons to meditate without doing Buddhist meditation, but Buddhist meditation assumes that you have a kind of positive dissatisfaction with your life. I don't mean a neurotic dissatisfaction, that you're simply neurotically unhappy, and you need to work with that. I need to work with that. We all do. But that somewhere there's something positively dissatisfied about the life that you're given and presented with. That you feel that is not enough, that it's not truthful, it's not honest enough, it's not a solution. They're false solutions, and you know that because when you get that false solution, it doesn't work. Yeah. I've been particularly reflecting on how achievement doesn't work. It really feels like it should, that once you achieve something, you'll then feel confident, you'll then feel as someone, you'll then feel so confident at that party, and you won't feel like diminished by other people, and you just know yourself because you've published this book or you've got this amount of income. It just doesn't work. It's weird. In consciousness, it's like it just for a moment you get this lovely feeling of I'm a someone, then the next morning you're back to being diminished you again, and that's just how life is. And the Buddha's quest to enlightenment, or Siddhartha's quest with enlightenment was that same issue. He was supposed to be a prince and so on, but it didn't work, and he knew it didn't work. He was strangely sort of precociously honest about his own experience, and he could see that there was no such thing as lasting happiness. And he knew that there was going to be old age and death. So he needed to go looking for the truth. Any really genuinely human life is like that, isn't it? You're honest and you think, well, this isn't working, so I need to look for what does work. I need to search for the truth, not for the untrue. I need to search for real solutions, not mock solutions, not fake solutions, not false solutions. That's what any genuine life is about, whether it's Greek, the Greek philosophers, or whether it's Iain McGilchrist exploring the brain, or Schopenhauer exploring thought, or Marilyn Robinson writing her novels about the poor in America. You're always trying to think, well, what is real, what is truthful, what is really valuable. And that's the same as the Buddha. Yeah. Some people don't feel that. Some people don't feel that life doesn't work particularly, or at least it doesn't bother them very much. It doesn't bother them in a way that it bothered me. And of course, that being bothered by it can be, as I say, a neurotic thing. And, you need to work on that and find ways of being happier and so on. But for some people, the fact that life doesn't work bothers them. Bhante Sangharakshita thought it was about 10% of the population. It's quite a lot. He was coming back from a bookshop in London, he was looking around on the tube, and he thought, about 10% of people will be interested in this quest for truth. Yeah, that's what he thought anyway. Anyway, that's my attempt to answer that very large question.
Yeah. So Emma's asking, in relation to you mentioning Foucault and Derrida and deconstruction, she was wondering about the relationship between what we've been practicing this week and a practice like the 6 element practice, which seems to be about deconstructing.
Oh yes, that's a very good question. I mean, just to be clear, I've never read Foucault or Derrida. We didn't actually read the sources. We just talked loosely about them. I had an argument with a friend of mine about Foucault, and I had to admit that I knew nothing about him, and he had actually read him. So I put them aside. But yeah, when you're ordained, you're taught the 6 element practice, which does seem to be a deconstruction practice. You're trying to see that things are empty. The whole, sort of approach to experience of non-self can seem like that. And in a certain sense, in our new context, that's rather a danger, I think. Buddhism is always, if it's done that, deconstruct the self, as it were, by going through the elements of experience, it's not doing that to show you that none of that means anything. It's trying to show you that all of that means something. It becomes impossible to talk about, but it's not a deconstruction in this modern sort of ironized sense where you rather, in a way that's rather pleased with yourself, you take things that are meaningful and show them to be made up of parts that don't mean anything. That's absolutely alien to a Buddhist approach, even if that's an apparent exploration of non-self. That's nothing remotely like Buddhism. Buddhism is trying to let go of self so that you experience something that goes beyond the self, but which includes it, which is beyond you but not separate from you. That's why in traditional Buddhism you would always imagine that you're meditating, and you're meditating in a world animated by consciousness, and that can be the trees around you, the mud around you, the floor underneath you, and the Buddhas and Devas in the universe around you. That if you let go of self, what you let go into is a world of beauty and majesty and consciousness that's not yours, but not strictly speaking, not yours either. Yeah. So that would be something more like a Buddhist approach, and frankly, something more like a healthy approach. I really don't like this habit of taking meaning and unscrewing it all and saying, look, it's unmeaningful. It's actually been immensely destructive in culture. What we need to do is reassert the meaning of meaning. But we need to do that in a much more subtilized way than saying God, for instance, which personally I've never been able to believe. But like all metaphors, perhaps, Wallace Stevens, the American poet, thought that God was the greatest metaphor that human beings had come up with. But like all metaphors, it was getting at something magical, something that feels like a solution to the human situation. I think Buddhism does that in a much clearer, less problematic way than using a grand abstract metaphor like God. But look, we better draw things to a close. I do want to once again ask you to give us money, quite boldly at 8:20 in Herefordshire. Thank you for those of you who have given to the project already. What we want to do is continue this project on. We've got a 6-month project, and in that project we want, for a start off, to support Nick, who's in the room with me just now. But we want to actually be able to keep on doing this for free for as many people, so that someone on the Ivory Coast can tune in, someone in Venezuela can tune in, someone in Melbourne can tune in. Actually, there's no reason why that we can't have 1,000 people on this call. But to do that, we'll need to raise money. But we really don't want to start charging for it. That doesn't feel right either. I really want to make it so that you can just click and you're in. You're learning meditation from day one. You're joining. Soon we're going to have other very, very, very wonderful meditation teachers like Vidyamala, like Sadhanandi, like Sona. And we can continue doing that if we can raise the money to support it. We've already bought lots of cameras so that the interviews that we're going to be posting are as good quality as possible. We need to do lots of advertising on social media. We're asking you to help get the word out. But yeah, we will really need quite a bit of money. Well, we always do, don't we? But wouldn't it be wonderful if, I don't know, this time next year we've got 2,000 on this call, and people who have never even thought about meditation before, have never thought about the fact that they could do something about their suffering. The Buddha said that I teach suffering and the end of suffering. In other words, that's all I'm interested in. Yeah, that's all I'm interested in. I'm not interested in philosophy. I'm not interested in metaphysics. I'm not interested in political science. I'm interested in helping individuals suffer, not to suffer. Yeah? And one of the things he'd be saying is the reason they suffer is to do with their mind. It's not just, there are political reasons, there are social reasons, but the great reasons are to do with their mind. Yeah? So there are millions upon millions of people out there who are suffering, and we can help them with their mind. But to do that, I want it to be free to all moments, and to do that we need to raise funds. So do give. What we're suggesting is if you could give a sort of £50 donation, which covers all of these classes and the interviews with Iain McGilchrist and the seminar and the morning meditations. That's a sort of guideline anyway. If you can give more than that, that'd be fabulous. If you can give less than that, that's no problem. But it's been really, so I'll get Nick to post the link. So it's been really, really lovely meeting you all in this. It's funny that this format does mean I feel sort of meet you. I met Maria Elena in Venezuela. I've met Becky in Melbourne. I've met so many of you, Amy, and it's just really, really good. So let's see if we can all give to the project, and that means that we can spread the project much, much further. The sky is the limit with this form. So I hope I see you again. I'm sure I will. I hope I will. Tune in for what will happen is once Nick has got around to it, we'll send you all an email with the link to all of these meditation teachings, with the link to the seminar, the link to our conversations with Iain McGilchrist. And then if you haven't watched those, do watch them, and then we've really explored quite deeply Iain McGilchrist's thought about the hemispheres of the brain, and then we can start to explore the question of near-death experiences and what do they say about the nature of mind. Yeah, and then that will be our next step in this exploration of the nature of mind. Yeah. Okay, so let's do the traditional unmuting. Really lovely to see you all in your bedrooms with your blankets, with your dogs and cats and your cups of tea, and really lovely to see you. So see you soon. We can now all unmute. I think you can now speak.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
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 Thank you, guys.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you very much.
Really inspiring week.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Have a lovely
See you
day,
later.
everyone. And thank you so much, Maitreyabandhu.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go on, Nick and Embodied, show yourselves. There's Embodied. Thank you to Embodied. Here's Nick. Thank you to Nick. He is the tech. He is the brain behind the project. So thank you to Nick. Thank you to Embodied.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. See you later. Have a good day. Have a good day. Look forward to seeing you again soon.